It's been a while since I talked about a manga that has really piqued my interest, and a while ago I finished reading a manga series that has been completed, and this series is called Chi no Wadachi, which is translated in English to say blood on the tracks. What happens when you have an overprotective parent that is not only very protective of you, but have dark secrets that even you yourself may not be aware of it. Now, there's nothing wrong with a parent trying to protect their child. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. And while I may not be a parent myself, nor do I have any kids whatsoever, but based with my experience on having parents, yeah, there are going to be moments in which your parents are going to try to protect you no matter what, even if it's not really necessary or you might see it as completely annoying to do. But of course, everything has limits, and in this manga series, it just shows us that being too protective of your kids and controlling what they can and cannot say or do is not a healthy way of doing parenting. Now, like I mentioned before, this series has already been completed, and in total it has 153 chapters. So unfortunately, I won't be able to go into every little detail, because if I were to do that, we'd be here all day. Instead, I want to talk about just really what makes this manga so interesting and why really I haven't forgotten it even after finishing reading it. So with that out of the way, let's just begin. The story starts with our character known as Sei, who seems to be your very average kid having a very average life. He goes to school, he has a couple of friends, and he is very happy that he's going to have a break off school since it's about to be summer break. However, there is some unfortunate news that he comes to find out when he returns home, when his mother informs him that his aunt and his cousin known as Shige are going to be coming to visit, meaning that he's going to spend a few portion of his summer break being with family, which of course was not something he was expecting, but he decides to just simply go along with it. So yeah, these first couple of chapters, everything seems to be normal, but then we are introduced to his aunt and his cousin, and we see that Sei and his cousin have a very up and down relationship. At first, it may seem that everything is fine, but then you quickly see that Sei is not a huge fan when Shige says that he is a mama's boy, since we come to find out that pretty much for all his entire life, his mom was there with him. No matter where he goes or what he did, his mom always kept an eye on him. Now, of course, later on, Shige will say that he's just messing with him and to not take it seriously. It's still something that Sei has on his mind. Later on, it's announced that the entire family are going to go on a hiking trip very soon. This includes Sei and Shige as well, and of course everything seems to be going along well. That is until Shige tells Sei to go a bit closer towards the end of the cliff, which Sei does exactly that. However, Shige decides to pull a prank on him and lightly pushes him, which seems to have lost Sei's balance. Of course, his mom seeing this panics because she believes that Sei is about to fall off the cliff, but thankfully that doesn't happen. However, other members of the family seem to laugh over the situation, just simply saying that she is very overprotective, and it seems that Sei's mom isn't really bothered by this and just simply brushes it off. However, Sei is a different case. Later on, they take a lunch break from the hiking trip, and this is where Shige once again tells Sei to follow where he's going to go. Both of them end up being in an even more higher cliff, and this is where Shige once again tells Sei to go closer to the cliff. Of course, at this point, Sei doesn't really trust his cousin and doesn't listen to him. This of course leads the cousin taunting him, saying that if he has something to say, then he should say it. But then out of nowhere, Sei's mom is right there, and not only does she ask what are they both doing there, but she also tells Shige to be careful since the cliff that they are at is really high and very dangerous. Shige once again doesn't listen, and this time he in fact taunts the mother. But for a moment, Shigeru actually loses his balance, and this of course leads to him panicking for a little bit, but thankfully he is saved by Sei's mom, who comes to the rescue. But this is where the story takes a complete 180, as for a moment we see that Shigeru has no idea what's going on and is completely confused based on what he sees on his aunt's expression. Now, we don't really see it, but out of nowhere we see that Sei's mom pushes Shigeru off the cliff, and we see Sei completely shocked and just dumbfounded as to just what happened. He just witnessed his own mother push his cousin off the cliff. But just as Sei is about to put the pieces together and it seems that he's come back to reality, his mom asks for help and pleads him to look for the other members to tell him what just happened. Sei listens and informs the other family members that Shigeru has fallen off a cliff. This of course causes panic. Later on, we will come to find out that Shigeru actually survived this fall despite how high it was thanks to the leaves and trees breaking his fall. But he is sent to the hospital right away, and during that time the police come in to interview what happened. When the police interview Sei, telling him what happened, he makes up a lie saying that he just saw Shigeru fall off the cliff and nothing ever happened afterwards, not telling them that it was in fact his mother that was the one that pushed him off the cliff. But to make it even more disturbing, his mom isn't even fazed by what happened and seems to be just acting like her usual self, almost as if the situation is not really that big of a deal. But this is a completely different story for Sei, because obviously this is something that's still in his mind and he hasn't forgotten about it, and he hasn't forgotten about the memory that his mother was the one that was responsible for what happened to Shigeru. But of course, due to him saying that Shigeru falling down a cliff was a complete accident, that's pretty much all the police labeled this, just a complete accident. Later on, we see that clearly this is taking a toll on Sei because his life is not normal anymore. He's at a complete loss of words for what happened during that summer break. It is so bad that even a girl that he was interested in and it seems that he had feelings for actually came by to his house to give him a letter, which later on will be revealed to be a confession letter, of course saying that she had feelings for him. But this was not enough for him to forget about the entire situation. And to make things even more bizarre, when his mom finds out that he got a letter of a confession from a girl, not only does she somehow convince him to try to forget about this girl, but actually convinces him to break the letter, meaning that he should just tear it to pieces and pretend that he never got it in the first place. At these early signs, we get to see that the mother is not your typical mother, and it's very clear based on the entire situation that happened beforehand that there is clearly something wrong with her. But even though Sei is thinking this in the back of his head, he doesn't say it out loud because of course this is his mother. This is somebody that he has put a lot of trust and love into, so obviously he's not going to say anything that could lead to her mother being in huge trouble, but also lead to her mother not liking him. And as the chapter continues and as time goes by, nothing really drastically changes. Sei still sees his mother acting completely normal and still not really be bothered by the fact that his cousin is still in the hospital and still has injuries because of the fall. But to make it even more worse, we not only see his mother making sure that she's able to still control him, but sadly when Sei visits the hospital to see how Shigeru is doing, he comes to find out that while he did survive the fall, that didn't mean that he made a full recovery, as he comes to find out that Shigeru now has a lot of health problems, mostly in his head because of the fall. This of course makes Sei completely sad and completely angry at himself. He didn't want something like this to happen. He didn't want his cousin to now have to deal with these kind of things, all because of what happened during the hiking trip. So when he goes to his home once again and his mother is there to talk to him, this is where we see Sei become more confrontational towards his mother, asking why did she push his cousin off the cliff. And this is where we see her manipulative side, telling Sei that if he prefers to see her die, and if that's the case, then he should be the one to take her life. But of course, Sei doesn't want to do that, and this is where she uses it to her advantage, telling Sei that if he wants, she could take his life. And this is where we see her starting to choke him, and just as it seems that she's about to go fully through with this, she stops, telling him to never talk to her like that ever again and to get ready for school. Again, acting as if what she just did is completely fine. But of course, Sei is traumatized by this situation and is once again at a loss for words. And as time goes on, we start to see Sei start to lose his mind, almost as he's going completely insane. But the only thing that's keeping him completely normal is of course his relationship with the girl that is interested in him. And this girl's name is Yuko, who starts to spend more time with each other and they start to actually get to know each other more better. We come to find out that Yuko also doesn't have a very normal life as well. Not only did her mother leave her, but her father is also a very bad parent. Not only is he an alcoholic, but she explains that there have been moments in which it seems that he has taken his anger out on her. And of course, for Sei, this was news for him because he didn't expect her to have that kind of life. But now that he has found someone that he can relate to, this is where we see Sei start to realize that this is the person he wants to be with. And of course, he does know that Yuko does have feelings for him, so when he asks her to be in a relationship with him, she gladly accepts. And it seems that Sei now has finally gotten someone that he could be comfortable with, not only be happy with, but he can be able to forget about his problems just by being with this person. But unfortunately, his mother is still in the picture, so when she finds out that not only has he been spending a lot of time with a girl, but now that he's in a relationship with, she completely loses it. And one day she sees them together late at night, and this of course leads to Sei freaking out once he's able to notice that he has been caught. But in these moments, he actually puts his foot down, telling his mother to not only leave them alone, but he also reveals that he actually just outright hates his mother for everything that has happened. But surprisingly, his mother doesn't fight back and instead just walks away, which was something that even Sei himself was surprised by. But sadly, despite him actually running away for a while away from his home, this doesn't last long, as once again he is being kept under control by his mother. This time when he comes back, she actually becomes very manipulative even more, telling him that what he saw that day wasn't the actual story. You see, according to her, she did not push his cousin. In fact, all that really happened was that he just lost his balance and he just fell. And she actually did have good intentions, as she did try to save him, but she just didn't make him. Of course, this messes up his mind even more, and I'm fully aware that he probably should have known better and just simply, not trust her and not believe what she was saying. But once again, this is his mother, and of course, no matter how insane she is, he is still trying to believe that her mother isn't a complete terrible person. But of course, things don't always last long, and at some point the truth will be revealed. And that's exactly what happened when Shigeru's parents start to become more suspicious as to what actually happened that day. And after a few confrontations, Sei's mom would eventually come out and say that she did in fact push him, that she was the one that caused Shigeru to fall off the cliff. Of course, because of her mother controlling and manipulating him, Sei still defends his mother in these moments, telling them that that is not true, that her mother is not the person that would do this. But of course, at that point, everything has come to an end, that Sei's mom just tells him to not bother because she's been caught. And this of course will lead to the family taking her to the police, in which she would be arrested. Some time has passed, and despite her mother no longer being next to him, he is still not able to let go of her and hasn't forgotten about her. But it was actually at this point in the story that we come to find out that his mother was just a complete psychopath, as there was a memory that he was always hiding in the back of his head, and it seems that for a while he actually forgotten about it, but now he's actually starting to remember it. And it was a moment when he was a young kid, in which one day his mother and him were walking outside, took him to a mountain, and we got to see just how twisted she really was, because as it turns out, she really had intentions of not only ending her own life, but also ending his life at such a young age. And she actually goes through with it, as she throws him off the hill that they were at, and this of course leads to him having a lot of injuries all over him, but he actually survived. But once she realizes that he survived his fall, she actually changes her mind and has no intentions of ending her life anymore, and just tells him that they should just go home. Again, showing us that what she just did, and just her viewing this entire situation in which her own son was badly injured because of her, she viewed it as nothing and pretended like nothing happened. But probably one of the most insane moments in this manga was when his cousin out of nowhere shows up to his house on a snowy day and asks him to play with him. This of course shocks Sei, but he actually follows his cousin because no matter how many times he pleaded with him to come by his house, Shigeru ignored him and just went to a specific location. And this is where Sei realizes that where Shigeru is going is the same place his mother tried taking his life at a young age. But here we see that it seems that Sei's mind is playing with him, and he's actually getting off of reality. He sees an illusion of his mother, and this is where he starts to take all his rage and pain towards this illusion, telling this version of his mother that everything that has happened to him was all her fault, that she has no idea what he has had to go through because of her. It seems that he is taking all his anger and what he actually felt towards his mother towards this illusion. But surprisingly, this illusion counters him, saying that he shouldn't just be blaming her for everything because he also wasn't perfect. There was also a side of him that was insane, as that memory of that day is brought back to him, but this time he actually is following her mother's point of view, and he sees that her mother was in fact afraid of him. It's in that moment when his cousin was about to fall and she saved him. She saw his face full of menace and she was completely scared of him, almost as if he was telling her with no words she should push him, and she does exactly that. And at this point, all Sei can say is that if this really was what was going through his mind that day, did he really have thoughts of his cousin falling off that cliff? And at this point during this illusion, he's actually able to witness his young self, saying that the only reason why this all happened was because he existed. If he hadn't existed, his mom wouldn't have turned out the way she was. Of course, this is something that is very messed up to hear. This young version of him tells him to just go through with it, to end his life, to do the thing that his mother failed to do. And he, because he's already far off reality, does exactly that. He believes that this is all just a dream, just an illusion. But we come to find out that in reality, who he ended up actually pushing is not his young version of himself, but his cousin. But strangely, his cousin smiled through all this, and just as he was falling down, he really didn't seem panicked and just simply had a smile on his face. Later on, Sei wakes up thinking this is all a dream, but he notices that his clothes are all wet, implying that he was outside. This is confirmed when the police come knocking at his door, and of course the police realize that Sei had something to do with his cousin because they saw that his boots were clearly used, meaning that he was outside at some point at night, and this of course leads to the police arresting Sei. Because of the serious matter, this of course leads to Sei not being in a detention center. It's very clear that he's been here for a good while, but it was during this time that not only does he find out that his mother was released due to the police not having enough evidence that what she did, despite him being a witness and despite the police questioning him in which he would reveal what happened that day, it seemed that it was all labeled as circumstantial. But this wasn't the biggest twist in the story, not that there hasn't been many twists in this story, but during his trial, his mother will actually tell them that she no longer wants to be a mother, making it very clear that at this point in her life, she really doesn't care what happens to Sei and has just stopped caring for Sei as a whole. This of course infuriates Sei because everything that has happened in his life, she had some sort of role with it. He was so angry that in fact even in the trial, he actually attacked his own mother, but her mother didn't seem to react to this and just simply walked away as soon as the fight was broken. But after this whole ordeal, he would be sentenced and his verdict would be guilty, in which he would have to spend time in juvie. We flash forward 2 years later, and now Sei is already an adult, and it seems that he actually moved away from his hometown and has moved to Tokyo, working as a factory worker. At that point in his life, he no longer has any friends. The girlfriend that he used to have, this being Yuko, he has pretty much cut all contact with her. The only person who he seems to be in contact with daily or for the most part of his life now is his own father. But unfortunately, his father has already become very old, and sadly he will pass away very soon. It will be revealed that it seems that Sei has been waiting for this moment for his father to no longer be alive, because he actually has intentions of ending his own life. But just as he's about to do it, he doesn't go through with it. There is still something that he has to let go, and there is still something almost as if he's not going to go through with this unless he's able to let go of this specific thing. And once he finds out that his mother is actually living in Tokyo, his focus changes to that, and for a while it seems that he is not happy, realizing that his mother is living in the very similar area where he's living, and clearly shows no interest in her whatsoever. But very quickly, once he's able to see what she's been up to, he realizes that her life hasn't been the greatest ever since the entire incident. It seems that she has been going through a lot as well, and at one point he actually decides to take care of her and starts to talk to his mother once again. But very strangely, his mother starts to really not remember anything of him, and it seems that she has no idea that the person that she's talking to is her son. It seems that her memories are starting to be erased, but it doesn't seem to leave any impact to Sei, as he doesn't really seem to be bothered by it whatsoever. whatsoever. And it will be at this point in the story towards the very end that we will come to find out why his mother was this kind of person. We will come to find out that she did not have a great childhood. She was pretty much neglected by her parents, as they seemed to be more interested in her other sister than her. So because of that, she tried to make a promise to herself that if she were to become a parent, she would do everything that her parents didn't do to her kid. But despite Sei being born and despite her having her own child, it seemed that never really cured her loneliness. It seemed that she was still very unhappy despite having a child that she seemed to have always wanted. And I think that's really the most unfortunate thing, is that Sei's mom was just simply a lonely person who felt that she never really got any happiness, even though she was happily married and even though she had Sei as a child, and it seems that she was very happy to have a child. It seemed that it was still not enough for her to not feel lonely. And of course, just like his father, at that point she was already at an age where she really started to have a lot of health problems. And Sei realized this very quickly, and once he sees that her health has deteriorated, meaning that she has no longer any more time to live, Sei ultimately realized that this was always the thing that was keeping him from doing what he was about to do. But now that his mother is about to pass away, it seems that he can finally let go of her, and is revealed through a dream that he is still in fact very disgusted by his mother, and he in fact just straight up hated her till the very end. All those times where it seemed that when he was taking care of her and was accompanying her, it seemed that he's starting to forgive his mother. That was not the case. He was just simply waiting for her to pass away so that he can finally have peace in his mind and realize that he doesn't have to think about his mother anymore because, well, she no longer exists. And once again, time goes by and we see Sei become even more older, and it seems that he's now finally at peace, because towards the very end of the story, we see that Sei reveals that he has no recollection of his mother anymore. He has completely forgotten how she even looks like, implying that he has truly let go of his mother and that now he's finally free from her. And that would be the end of the story. This manga really interests me, and it really just made me surprised, shocked, emotional even after finishing reading it. It was a manga that really stayed on my mind for quite a while because of everything that happened. Sei wasn't a perfect person. There were still some things that he had that clearly made him somebody that was not normal, but you can't deny that he was also a victim as well. He was being controlled and manipulated by somebody that was his own mother, somebody that you should put a lot of trust and care to, because you would never expect that person to harm you in any way. But that was not the case. He had a very disturbing mother, a mother who seemed to be always protecting him and being too overprotective, but in fact that was not the entire case. She was very clearly unstable, and had anybody found out everything she was doing when he was a young kid, she probably should have been separated from him and never have any contact with him whatsoever. But unfortunately that didn't happen, and overall it's just a very sad story because we got to see that Sei never really truly let go of his mother. His mother was still haunting him even during his adult years. And what makes it even more tragic is that he pretty much had no one to lean on. Sure, he had his father, but at that point his father was already at an age in which any time he would pass away. He didn't have any friends anymore, and the girl that he used to love, this being Yuko, had moved on, because when he was actually burying his father after he passed away, he actually went to his hometown and Yuko was still there, but at that point she already had her own kids and she was already married, making it very clear that ever since he left, Yuko was pretty much doing her own things and having her own life as well. So yeah, overall very sad manga. If you're looking for a manga that is very emotional, I think this is the manga you should read. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, I wasn't going to cover every little detail that happened because there's just too many chapters. There's 153 chapters. So obviously, I wasn't going to be able to include everything that happened to the story, but I highly recommend check it out because this story is really interesting. It really stayed on my mind even after reading it. I know I said that many times, but it's just true. That's exactly how I felt after reading this. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you next time.